Okay, we're good to go. Can you guys see my screen?
Let's see.
Yes, we can.
We've got it.
Yep.
Excellent. All right, let's jump in then. Like to call this meeting of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Planning Commission Planning Committee on June 21st, 2022 to order, please. And just a few housekeeping tips, some Zoom call tips. Please mute your audio when you're not speaking. Use only one source of audio, computer or phone. Do not put your phone on hold. We don't need the music, thank you. Submit questions in the chat box when possible. And to request the floor, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. That's under reactions now. And wait to be acknowledged by myself or whoever's holding the meeting at that point before proceeding. And to make a motion, please state your name before making a first or second motion. And let's all remember to keep our points clear and concise. Thank you. All right, let's jump into, we will jump into introductions right now. And I'll first lead off with our Vice Chair, Commissioner Barbie.
Hello, everyone. Erin Barbie, Planning Commission.
And Commissioner Harvey.
RJ Harvey, Planning Commission.
Commissioner Russell.
Commissioner Will Russell, Planning Commission.
Commissioner Gaston.
Melissa Gaston, Planning Commission.
Thank you. Commissioner McMillan.
Elizabeth McMillan, Planning Commission.
Thank you. And I am the chair of this committee, Philip Gussman, and vice chair of the Planning Commission. And I see that our chair of the commission has joined us. I'll give her a chance to introduce herself.
Good evening. This is Kiva Samuel, Chair Planning Commission in listen only mode. Thank you.
I figured you were trying to sneak in, but I thought I'd out you. Thank you very much. Let's move on to some of our staff introductions. And hold on, let me get my list up. Let's lead off with, I'm just running through the list as I see it now. Alan.
Alan Goodwin, Planning Staff, UDO Team.
Thank you. Alicia.
Alicia Osborne, Planning.
Welcome. And Kathy.
Kathy Cornett, Planning Staff.
Thank you. And Kevin.
Good afternoon, Kevin May, Planning Staff, UDO Team.
Welcome. And Laura.
Laura Harmon, Planning Staff, UDO Team.
Thank you. Tim Porter. I don't know if we have another Tim.
Good evening, everyone. Tim Porter, Planning Staff, Chief Urban Forester.
Thank you. Xenia.
Xenia Duhaney, Planning Staff.
Thank you. Alberto.
Alberto Gonzalez, Planning Staff, Long Range Division.
Excellent. Caroline.
Caroline Sawyer, Mecklenburg County Asset and Facility Management.
Thank you. And Karen. Weatherly.
Hi, I'm Karen Weatherly with the City Attorney's Office. I'm just a fly on the wall.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mariah.
Hi, Mariah Wozniak, Planning Staff, UDO Team.
Thank you. And then Warren.
Hey, Warren Wooten, Housing and Neighborhood Services. Good to see everyone.
Excellent. Thank you. Yes, good seeing you as well. All right. Anyone I missed?
Gretchen Flores, Planning Staff.
Thank you. I think we have everyone introduced. Excellent. All right. First order of business would be, I trust everyone had a chance to review the May 17th, 2022 meeting minutes. Anyone have a motion they'd like to make?
This
Or
is
correction?
Barbie. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from May 17th, 2022.
Thank you very much. Any seconds?
This is Commissioner Gaston. I second that motion.
Excellent, Commissioner Gaston. Thank you very much. I'll run through our roll call. Commissioner Barbie.
Yes.
Commissioner Harvey.
Yes.
Commissioner Russell.
Yes.
Commissioner Gaston.
Yes.
Commissioner McMillan.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes as well. We have properly seconded, motion seconded and voted on. Meeting minutes are approved. Let's jump into our mandatory referrals. We have a nice little batch here to work with. I'll first put it out there and ask any of our commissioners if they have any they'd like to have pulled out for a little bit more discussion. Anyone? I've got one. I'd like to see if I could just get the elevator pitch on, and that is number 2022-20. I see that we have a nice little piece of property there. Seems to be in our neighborhood services. I think that explains someone with that just introduced themselves just a moment ago.
Yes. Right. This is good evening. This is Alberto Gonzalez, planning staff. This is mandatory referral 2220. And yes, I have Warren Wooten on the call. He's from Housing and Neighborhood Services, and he could probably explain it a lot better. And the map doesn't do it justice. I would just say this really is a transfer of the common area for this development, which is off of LaSalle Street and Catherine Simmons Avenue. It should have been transferred back when the development was built, but for some reason the common area was not. So Warren, I don't know if you want to add to it more specifically as to the specifics as to why we're doing this one now.
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. And it's good to see everyone, and just thanks for the work that you do. You have a tireless job. This is kind of a correction to something that came through in 2019. This is a half-developed affordable housing development called Vantage Points that's in the LaSalle corridor right off of Beatty's Ford. We are working with our partners at Dream Key to develop 12 units of affordable housing on this site. Those 12 units, those 12 parcels went through mandatory referral in 2019 and were approved for this purpose. What we determined as we were doing due diligence and getting ready to do this project is that the common area, so if it's hard to see in the picture in front of you, if you take all of the housing units, it's everything that's left. It is their parking lot, it is their mail facility, and it is their stormwater facility that you're actually looking at there. Those were actually still titled to the nonprofit that originally developed the property. They then quick claimed that property to us, and we're going through actions to get it into the hands of the actual nonprofit homeowners association that will be the caretaker of the property from here on out. So this is a corrective action so that we can move forward with this affordable housing development.
I see. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. I was like, I think this project's already been underway. And so how many units are we talking? I know we always like to celebrate our victories here.
Yeah, so this is going to be 12 units of for sale affordable housing right on the Beatty's Ford corridor that will be sold to households at or below 80% of area median income.
Excellent. Thank you. So this really is just cleaning it up as what it basically looked like, but I just wanted to make sure there's no additional units we're bringing online because of this action.
That's correct.
No.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I believe I have a conflict of interest with this mandatory referral 22-20, being that the partner to the city is Dream Key Partners, my place of employment.
I believe you're correct. Thank you for recognizing that. And yes, since it's hard to send you out of the room, I would just ask that you not contribute anymore to the debate, and we'll vote this one separately so you're able to vote on the others.
Thank you very much.
Very good point. Does any other commissioners have a question about this one or wish to pull another mandatory referral for discussion? Looking for hands. Forgot to look for hands earlier. So speak up. I don't see any. Okay, I would love to hear a motion that separates out item number 5 from the others. And then we'll go back and we'll do mandatory referral 22-20, so we can be a bit selective on how our votes go.
Well, it's slightly complicated and my dogs are barking, but I can do the first one. Hold on.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Commissioner Barber.
Oh, they're loud. Is there another commissioner that can do it? Because they're just going to be in the background. I apologize.
No problem.
I'll do it.
Come back to you for the vote.
No, I'll do it. The planning committee reviewed mandatory referral reports 22-18, 22-19, 22-21, 22-22, and 22-23 on June 21st, 2022, and have no additional comments for the submitting agencies.
Perfect. So properly moved. Can I get a second for that?
Commissioner Barbie, I'll second that.
Thank you. Thank you. Properly moved and seconded. I will go to roll call vote. Commissioner Barbie?
Yes.
Commissioner Harvey?
Yes.
Commissioner Russell?
Yes.
Commissioner Gaston?
Yes.
Commissioner McMillan?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes as well. So those have been approved and we can advance with those. I would like to entertain a motion to approve 22-20 if anyone's interested in making one.
This is Commissioner Gaston. The Planning Committee reviewed mandatory referral report 22-20 on June 21st, 2022, and have no additional comments for the submitting agencies.
Perfect. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Moved by Gaston, seconded by Harvey. I'll go to the roll call vote. Commissioner Harvey?
Yes.
Commissioner Gaston?
Yes.
Commissioner Russell?
Yes.
Commissioner McMillan?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes as well. That will carry with 5-0 with one commissioner abstaining. All right, that is our mandatory referral business for the evening. And that is good. Now we can jump into the meat of our UDO update as we start to get a little bit closer to getting this in front of the council and potentially completion of this part of the story. And Laura, I believe.
Yes, thank
Excellent.
you. We want to give you a little bit of an update on where we are with the second draft. And then we'd also have Tim Porter here, who will be talking about trees. You all will be asked to make a recommendation not only on the UDO, but an update to the tree ordinance. And Tim will explain a little bit about what that's about when he talks. So we didn't want to catch you by surprise next month, but wanted to give you a heads up on those two different items that we'll be asking you about and explain how tree regulations are split out. In the meantime, I'll just give you a quick update before we get to Tim on reminder timeline, and the public input process and where we are. So again, this is our timeline with the critical dates being that we released the draft on June 3rd. We will be having hearing on July the 11th, and we'll be asking you all to coming back to you on the 19th for a recommendation from the committee. So you have a little bit over a week, and then we'll be going to council on August 22nd for a vote on the UDO at that point in time. So next slide. We are in the midst of public engagement on the second draft. The public comment portal opened on June the 3rd when the second draft went out, and that will be open through June the 30th. And we have engagement opportunities, I believe, through the 29th. We have had virtual update sessions, already completed those, as well as an open house last week. And we've begun virtual office hours this week and the early part of next week. So if you've got folks who have questions about the UDO, please invite them, urge them to sign up for the virtual office hours.
Want to emphasize what Laura just went through there, guys. Let's make sure that if we know of anybody looking for an opportunity to ask a question, let's help facilitate that, everyone. We need this document to be the best it possibly can be, and that means all of us helping magnify the voices that might be helpful in helping get us to the right document and the right ordinance that we need here. Go right ahead, Laura. Sorry, I hate to interrupt, but
no, thank you. Appreciate it. So we will be summarizing and responding to feedback and providing that summary to City Council and Planning Commission and Planning Committee of what we've heard. And this just has the second draft public engagement opportunities again that I mentioned. Be glad to provide you all dates of any of those if you'd like. Next slide. And so now I'm going to hand this over to Tim and have him talk to you a bit about tree protection.
Thank you, Laura, and good evening, committee members. I appreciate your time and the opportunity to discuss some changes from draft 1 to draft 2. I believe we've presented a little bit on this before, but the main focus of tonight is to clearly inform and explain why we're coming to you asking for a recommendation and why the current tree ordinance is being proposed to be amended in conjunction with the UDO, following the same timeline, the same nights for public hearing, for recommendation, and for ultimately council vote. So I appreciate the opportunity to do that. The majority of the significant changes from draft 1 to the public hearing draft focus on heritage trees, but something really important to note is that in the first draft, all the tree protection and planting requirements were located in a separate article, Article 29. And we are shifting that and combining all the tree planting and protection regulations with the zoning related landscape and screening regulations into one, simply put, vegetation focused article in the UDO. That'll be Article 20. So all landscape yards, parking lot screening type regulations will be co-located with tree planting and preservation type regulations into Article 20. That was mainly done for streamlining purposes, customer service and staff support purposes. Also some applicability rationale for in the ETJ was a supporting foundational element to shift those regulations into one article. The main change from draft 1 to draft 2, as I said earlier, is the heritage tree regulation. And this is really the main driving reason why the tree ordinance, the current tree ordinance, is moving forward with amendments at the same time as the UDO. There's 2 key changes proposed for this regulation, essentially to split it into 2 applicability areas. The first one is a non-land development component, meaning that development triggers would not have to be met for this to apply. This would be a blanket protection that would apply to all properties within the city limits. And that's the real important item I wanted to focus on, is that is not technically a development component. The heritage tree regulation essentially will have a dual nature, a development and non-development component. Internal review, discussions with the development industry, feedback from attorney's office and many other stakeholders, general public, suggested that philosophically we pivot from the first draft. So the first draft had every tree regulation, development and non-development, proposed to be in the UDO. And we have pivoted in the second draft to really only focus on the true intent of the UDO, which is to combine all development regulations into one ordinance. So it did not make sense from that perspective to have this side of the heritage tree regulation, which is not development, in there. So we're proposing to place that in the standalone tree ordinance, the current tree ordinance, which has to be amended to do that. So with this change, the actual regulation, we're proposing a much more moderate and lower preservation intent. The first draft suggested that these trees could not be removed. And these trees are defined as a 30-inch diameter tree. You can kind of see me standing next to a tree in that image there next to Old City Hall. They're pretty good sized trees. That's exactly a 30-inch diameter. The tree, not me. I wish I had 30-inch waistline still, but that was a long time ago. That size and up for native trees will be protected on all properties in the city limits, which is important to note. Just in the city limits, that's where our regulatory authority exists for non-development tree regulations. So that's where we're proposing to place it, which requires this amendment, as you can see on the bottom there in the bold text. These trees in the non-development scenarios will be allowed to be removed in all cases with a strong mitigation requirement, and which require a $500 fee and some replanting components. A permit is required. But that is the main foundational reason why we'll be talking more to you in the future about a recommendation to amend the tree ordinance. The second component to this regulation, and number 2 there, is the land development side of the heritage tree protection, which would be development triggered. That's proposed to be in the UDO. That also has been really relaxed with a more moderate preservation intent, more flexibility and predictability for development customers. We're really focusing on more of a strong mitigation and tracking focus, a little bit higher mitigation fee, replanting emphasis. We want to learn more about both these sides of this regulation to see how it impacts property owners, development customers on a granular level, but also from an environmental perspective. We want to track where these trees are. We're proposing to do additional analysis, top-down GIS, work with some partners in the next 18 to 24 months. We will be taking on a new canopy goal project right after the UDO. So during that time, we would like to assess heritage trees as much as we can to understand in the future, should we keep this regulation? Should we propose something a little bit more stricter as far as preservation? Is this the right fit? Okay, so next slide, please. We'll jump into a much more kind of boiled down assessment of both sides of this regulatory concept. The land development side, from left to right, we have a where are we now under current regulations, the first draft in the middle column, and then the second draft, which is the public hearing draft. So right now we technically have a heritage tree regulation and the current tree ordinance. The current tree ordinance has development and non-development regulations in it. So there's a second reason that it has to be amended. We need to repeal or delete any development regulations in the current tree ordinance because they will either move into the UDO or they'll be retired completely. So that's the second reason we're proposing to amend the tree ordinance. But back to what do we have now for heritage trees? We have a regulation now for single family subdivisions only that says if you have a state champion size tree that's much, much greater than 30 inches, then it has to be preserved. Well, it doesn't really do anything. We average less than one of those trees per year. So it's really not an effective regulation. In the first draft, we suggested to really take a large step forward. So on a scale of 1 to 10, with 0 being no heritage tree protection and 10 being the strictest possible, I think the first draft was probably close to an 8. We were proposing a very strong preservation approach, that all trees that are heritage trees had to be preserved with very limited flexibility and criteria that would support authorization for removal. Mitigation was $1,000 per tree removed and 1 tree planted back. In all cases proposed and future These trees will be allowed to be removed if they're diseased, hazardous, or dying without a permit. So in the second draft, the public hearing draft, we have pivoted based on a lot of feedback from council, from our consultants, from the public, the development industry. The results of our economic impact analysis showed that that regulation as proposed in the first draft would severely restrict and limit development in some cases and prohibit development in other cases, which we felt the balance was not where we needed to be right now. So we're proposing a more moderate approach for preservation. Removal will be allowed if there's a demonstrated conflict. So a development customer could build to the full development footprint, if you will, assuming all other regulations are met. If there's a heritage tree in a place where a requirement or an allowable improvement could be or has to be installed, then it can be removed. More emphasis placed on mitigation. The fee is proposed to increase to $1,500 per heritage tree removed, with at least one mitigation tree replanted. That fee could be reduced or eliminated by $250 for each additional mitigation tree that's replanted. 2 areas of incentive are also proposed. If there's a specimen tree preserved on a developing site, that would be the next class below heritage trees. So 20 to 30 inch diameter, they'll be the next generation of heritage trees. If those are preserved, they can account as mitigation completely for any removed heritage tree. No fee or replanting required. And then also, if applicable, a developer could use any preserved heritage tree to count towards their green area requirement, which is currently known as tree save. And that heritage tree's canopy would count double the area. Okay, next slide, please. We'll talk about the second component of the heritage tree regulation. So this is what I started with, non-development. This doesn't make sense to be in the UDO. We currently don't have any regulations for this type of regulatory strategy. In the first UDO, the same exact approach was proposed. We did not split these. We didn't split up this regulation into 2 in the first draft. In the second draft, we are. And on the far right there, we're proposing more flexibility and predictability for property owners. Removal will be allowed in all cases. A permit would be required. $500 is the mitigation fee, so significantly lower than development scenarios. And again, that could be reduced or eliminated by $250 for each additional tree replanted. And again, a permit would be required. And in all cases, any diseased, dead, or dying hazardous tree could be removed without a permit or mitigation. And we do have some baseline criteria to qualify a tree as diseased, dead, or dying, or hazardous. So again, I'm not sure, is there another slide? Okay.
I was just about to say we should ask for questions, make sure we don't wander too far out of trees before we call you back.
Yeah.
Any questions from any of the commissioners? Hands, or just come off mute? I think I have one. So the biggest change really is that non-land development element is going to just go back to tree ordinance. And that does not mean that the UDO is any less unified. It's just the non-development portion is going to continue to exist outside of the development ordinance, correct? Fair?
That's correct. Yes, that's correct. If adopted, that's where it would live, is in that standalone tree ordinance. And there is some other minor amendments we're proposing. Some of it's grammatical, some of it's realignment. We're updating some language for the Charlotte Tree Advisory Commission. It's mostly procedural. We're adding a administrative section that explains the role of the chief urban forester as the administrator of the tree ordinance.
Right.
That is the only new regulation we're proposing, is this non-development side of the heritage tree concept.
Okay.
And technically right now, the tree ordinance is incorporated into the zoning ordinance by reference. So that is a kind of legal reality that's also supporting the need to come before this group and go through the process we're proposing.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I see that. And the biggest element that won't be covered by that will be by the UDO is the ETJ, correct?
That's correct.
right.
The private property non-development scenario would only apply within the city limits. Yes.
Right, anything, and because the other document does apply to the ETJ, this just will be the part that doesn't. I just want to make sure I've got that bit of legal part sorted out.
That's a great point, Mr. Gusman. Yeah, 100%
right.
correct.
Thank you. All right, that was my question. Anyone else have anything?
Yep, I have a couple of questions and then a comment. So just to frame my question here, when we're talking about development, we're really talking in most part about new development. So you're talking about a piece of green grass. So we know that most of the reasons why trees get cut down is to accommodate the parking that's required for buildings. So understanding that a lot of your trees are getting cut down for parking, is there a way to tie a reduction in parking if a tree is being saved? So say, for instance, if I am able to draw my parking lot in such a way to save a tree, especially a heritage tree, but it puts me below the minimum threshold of parking, would the city and would city planning be amenable to adding a carve out to allowing parking to not conform if you're saving a heritage tree?
That's a really interesting concept. And I'd ask Laura, someone on her team, maybe to chime in if they feel they need to. I'd be interested to kind of talk through that with my colleagues in planning. At this point, we don't have anything proposed in the UDO, to my knowledge, that would allow for that. But it's interesting how to tie that preservation interest with another important, parking obviously is a very important, prominent issue with the UDO. So that's very interesting. Right now, we don't have anything. I definitely think it's something we could talk about moving forward.
I would say we've definitely seen signaling from city council that might be one of the things I know that they keep seeming to want to run that example by staff at least. So it would be an interesting one to talk through and make sure we know how we may or may not handle it.
Yeah, I think that's something that should be considered. I will send you a graphic that I saw from a designer that really illustrates parking requirements. And I think that's a whole separate discussion for the UDO, but that should give you an idea for what I'm talking about and be very helpful from a graphics perspective. My other question, and you may have touched on this. So if you're cutting down a heritage tree, you can pay the $1,500 and then replace it with an additional tree. Now, does that additional tree have to be a specimen? Is there a level for what that tree has to be? It can't just, I can cut down this 25-inch diameter oak and replace it with a Bradford pear. How are we defining what the replacement tree should be?
Great question. I appreciate you touching on that. So any 30-inch tree or greater that's native, I want to make that point too. There's many trees on sites that are already developed or old, home sites that have non-native trees, but the replanted tree will be defined as required to be a large shade tree variety. We're targeting mostly native species, so you'd have to plant back it depends on the site, but it could be a 2-inch caliper native oak tree or a maple or something, a large shade tree, something that's commonly found in the nursery trade, garden centers, et cetera, as long as it meets the standard quality. So there's no intent to require replanting a massive tree. It's kind of a standard available size tree that's a large shade tree variety that's native in most cases. There'll be some criteria that explains. There's a few scenarios where non-native trees may be better suited, that we want to have flexibility for customers and property owners. Hopefully that answers your question, Mr. Russell.
It does. Thank you, Mr. Porter. That does. And then one comment, as everybody knows, when it comes to development, I will beat the table for small development every single day. So I would ask that urban forestry and planning staff, specifically Laura and her group, start also thinking about some carve outs for small scale development. And what I'm thinking about is more along the lines of ADUs, quadplexes, duplexes. Make sure that we have some flexibility so that we can get those types of units built without necessarily having to cut the tree down or incur large costs in order to make that happen. So just a thought there, and I'll turn the floor over. Thank you.
I appreciate those questions and feedback, Mr. Russell.
Excellent. Yes, definitely. Kiva, if you have a question, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to comment on Will's suggestion on trading trees for parking spaces or making some kind of exception. I think I would like to explore that a little bit more, not though in the way of an exception, but more from the bonus standpoint. So I'm wondering if I know there were some elements in the bonus structure that were updated as part of the second draft. Wondered if there was room to kind of explore the possibility there, but I'm less interested though, viewing that from an exception standpoint, as opposed to a bonus, some sort of bonus criteria element. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Samuel, for that feedback. I will definitely speak with Laura and her team and Allison to see what, if anything, makes sense to explore, to propose for the future. I know the public draft is moving forward, and there's not much more we can really add unless it's significant. And this might rise to that level, so we definitely want to be open to that, and we'll touch base to see if council has interest in it as well. So I appreciate those ideas. Generally, preservation is something that I always support, so I'm just going to make sure I balance that with my colleagues from the other disciplines and interests.
There you go. Excellent. You're getting better at the politics part. Not that, not that I want that from our chief urban forester, but it's the way of the world. Thank you. Any other questions? There's some good ones. No. Anything else from Laura and team? And let's then everyone drill down and think about what we have on the UDO that we might want to dive into. I know I didn't get any notice of what target areas we should have. Pardon me. I didn't get any notice of any target areas we need to pull out for more discussion. But there is an opportunity now if anybody has anything, or if Laura wants to go ahead and close out her section. I don't know.
Well, I'll give folks a minute to think about questions they might have. Just want to reiterate, as we're moving quickly towards deadline, that there may be things that we don't get into the first version of the UDO. And just put that out there. We are in a period now where we can't make changes to the version going to public hearing, though we will probably be making some recommendations for some cleanup and there, but also we will be looking at text amendments and changes even after the first version, fingers crossed, is adopted in August. So keep the ideas coming. We may not be able to get to all of them in the first version of the UDO, but that doesn't mean that we're not absorbing this and thinking through things. And we will be keeping this as a living document, and we'll be amending fairly frequently over the next few years.
Absolutely. And I think we saw that so far in the TOD, for example. We've certainly been making adjustments on that on the fly, and it's likely to be something we continue to do with this document. All right, looking for any questions?
Yeah, and now admittedly, I do need to read the second draft in some more detail. But is there any thought into relaxing parking more around transit station areas and within, the bus and transit lines, as we talked about? I did an analysis in South End probably 5 years ago around the Newbern station, and I found that 31% of the land within a 1 mile radius of that station was parking spaces, which is kind of defeating the purpose of having transit. So is there a thought in really clamping down within that especially within that quarter mile radius of a light rail or high bus line, of really reducing the parking to half a space or 0 spaces, or let the market dictate?
Yeah, that's a great question. In most cases, we have no parking minimum. If you are zoned TOD around a transit station, and we have parking maximums so that people don't overpark, that the uses that want a lot of people to drive there maybe need to find a different location than around our transit stations. Sometimes a hard pill to swallow for some folks. We do have, after feedback from council, we do have a recommendation that if you are close to neighborhood 1 and you're a limited number of uses, that you would have a parking minimum so that there isn't unintended spillover into neighborhoods. But the other thing that we've done in this draft, and I think you'll be interested in, is we have said, as long as you are not in a neighborhood 1 place type, that you can, if you're within a half-mile walk of a transit station, you can use basically the TOD parking standards, the no minimum standards, and the maximum standards, to allow other areas that are going to be transitioning over time to use those lesser parking requirements.
Okay.
So I think that's probably right along the lines of what you were looking for.
Right, but that seems to be in conflict with what council is requesting, because it sounds like council is pushing for parking minimums, and for everybody, a parking minimum is a bad idea. But
they are close to neighborhood 1. They are asking for parking minimums, but it's only for a block. So, and again, our community is evolving. If you talked about transit 20 years ago, people really didn't believe it was even going to happen. So it's going to take a while to evolve. And we're in the midst of this process, and our ordinance will evolve as our community and our forum evolves as well.
To Will's, I think I'm begrudgingly accepting this in this red line edition from the perspective of it's probably a solid compromise for now. And I do think that this is a part that might be, we might be talking about text amendment, removing that particular element. Maybe it's one of the first things, I don't know. So I will say that this one I've accepted under that kind of thinking as well.
And there is a standard in the current TOD. So this is not entirely new. Just to let folks know.
Understood.
Just an adjustment to the standard based on council feedback.
Yeah, that one makes me a little uneasy because of the inherent conflicts and what you're trying to get. Well, you got 3 conflicts. You got a conflict in the city that you're trying to build. You got a conflict in what is best practice, and then you got a conflict in what will fly politically. And so you end up with Waffle House hash, and that doesn't work well for everybody. And if it's okay with you, I do have some research on parking and some parking won't say regulations, but a way to regulate parking with pricing is hard for me to explain. I'll just send it directly to you, Laura, so you can see it. And I think that would be helpful, not only for you guys to think about, but it also provides you some talking points to have with council when they push back on saying, hey, we need to have parking because we want people spilling over. That this will give you a way to say, okay, but you can manage it by doing X, Y, Z.
All right, looking for any other questions? That was a good one, Will. Thanks. And Elizabeth.
There, yeah, I was just curious, probably not what Will is, recommending, but Laura, is there any consideration for that? The no parking, or meaning the, eliminating parking being, a credit to the bonus density? That ever come up, like, to kind of incent people to work towards eliminating parking? Is that part of the current bonus structure? Has that ever been thought of?
No, it's actually a requirement in a lot of cases to limit parking. And parking's a tough issue. So, but no, it's frankly not part of the bonus structure. It's something that we have found there are a whole lot of opinions on and not a really great consensus. So we're trying to kind of find the best middle ground we can for right now. And again, the community has to see that less parking will work in certain areas as you have transportation choices, and then we'll be able to hopefully continue to make adjustments as well.
Good question, Elizabeth. Thank you. Any other questions? I hope everyone's had a chance to spend at least some time with the red line edition. I think it's, at least for me, it's been a good way to really kind of drill down and go, all right, we did take that out. And you can see reflected many of our comments, some of the council comments and whatnot, and discussion that we've been listening to. Kiva, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make mention that we all should be encouraging each other and people that we know, sharing amongst our social media and other forms of networking, solicitation for comments on the second draft. This is probably more important now than even first draft comments. I did a news story with WCNC yesterday, probably appeared in the 6 o'clock news. And in that news story, they also shared information on how to comment. In the printed version of that interview, they shared the link that directly goes to the comment portal for the UDO. Let's do all we can to make sure that every voice is heard. I have heard from this body, from particular commissioners in this body, I've heard from other planning commissioners that the sentiment once was that people didn't know how to comment or didn't have an opportunity to comment in different processes. And we don't want that opportunity to happen this time. And this is our chance. Now, if you are hearing that from members of the public, I charge you all with making sure that each one of those persons know how to submit comments, how to get their voice heard. Would appreciate everyone's effort to that regard. Thank you.
I think that's probably the single best point we can bring up is make sure while we've all been living this for months, or if not years, there are probably voices out there that feel they haven't been heard. And this is a prime opportunity for us to help elevate those voices and make sure every voice is heard. And to Laura's point, at this point, we might not always be able to correct something in this document, but sometimes this is how that first text amendment or what have you down the road gets started. And don't forget, it's not done. We can certainly still have impact. So any other questions? This is our time. Let me check my notes, see if I have anything, but. Anyone?
I would also just offer that you guys have a relationship with council, if there's some of the things that you're hearing that council has guided us towards and you feel differently, then you guys may want to, as you have relationships with individuals, talk with them as well.
I just wanted to echo Laura's comment there. I think we all, to some extent, have a relationship with a city council member or two or nine. And as we are sharing conversation, as we are hashing out thought processes, as we are providing feedback and receiving feedback, if there is a concern that has not been addressed or you feel that has not been adequately addressed by Team UDO, I implore you to please press forward that concern immediately, just to make sure that as many of us be on the same page as possible. July 19th, I am looking forward to a unanimous vote to press forward UDO approval to recommend full recommendation to council for adoption. And if there's anything, if there's any pause, any hesitation, any unreadiness amongst this body, we want to know immediately, whether that's coming from your relationship with council members, whether it's coming from other constituents that you may converse with. Let's make sure all of our I's are dotted and T's are crossed. Give Laura and team the opportunity to address whatever concerns that we're hearing so that we can eliminate any unreadiness amongst the body.
You're here. Excellent. All right, any other questions? I don't want to do the going once, going twice bit. It's been used, but does anyone have anything? I encourage you to speak up now. All righty. All right. Well, I think we'll be saving a little bit of time, but I do want to recognize at least on, I hope it's not goodbye, but this might be Elizabeth McMillan's last meeting. We are going to make a request that she assist us with this vote if the potentially nominated member hasn't been sworn in, or I guess potentially they've been voted on, but if they're unsuccessfully getting sworn in the next few weeks, we might need her vote still next month. So I will, with a wink, like to recognize Elizabeth McMillan's last meeting of her 6 years of service on the commission. And I will say that Elizabeth has, besides being a delightful person, that's a given. But I would say Elizabeth has also done an incredibly good job of blending concern for community and for the residents and the communities of Charlotte with the development group as well. Honestly, she's done a great job providing very well thought out points and questions, not unlike the suggestion on the parking structure that she made and the parking bonus that she made earlier. Elizabeth, would you like to say anything before we all just pile on and talk about how great you are?
Oh, well, that's very kind. I appreciate you recognizing me and giving me a chance to speak. And it's hard to believe that this 6-year investment of time is kind of coming to a close. It seems, I can't quite believe it. So it's been great getting to know all of the staff better through this process. I thank you all for your all's hard work and support. It's been great. It's been a great experience for me. It's also been great getting to know my fellow planning commissioners. I know some of you better than others. And I appreciate your work. It's not easy and often thankless. So thank you all for signing up to do this important work and for all that y'all do for the community. Thanks, Phil.
Thank you. No, really, Elizabeth, you've been a great representative on this body throughout. And I've always have to listen up when Elizabeth is suggesting something, and then it seldom is it flippant or sideways or anything. It's your content and your contributions have been very helpful throughout my time on the commission.
Oh, thanks, Phil. I appreciate it.
I want to offer that you probably don't remember this, Elizabeth, because it was just who you are. But my very first planning commission meeting, I sat next to you and I had no idea what I was doing. And so I just I was that kid who was like cheating on a paper, just watching you doing what you do. And I did the same thing. And it was my lesson. So thank you for your kindness when I asked you a question and your consistency in your service, because that is how I felt comfortable. So thank you.
I will open the floor
Thanks,
now
Eric.
if any staff or other commissioners wishes to make a statement.
I'll jump in. I just want to say thank you to Elizabeth that gotten a chance to know you a bit better in this time period, and you've always been great to work with and very respectful of staff, and really appreciate it. And I know we'll be continuing to see you. So, but thank you so much for all you've done for the commission. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Laura. Phil, people don't need to go on. I appreciate it. It makes me very uncomfortable there.
Oh, you stop trying to hush people. You're awesome and you know it. It's Kiva. And I think you missed the last 10 minutes or so of the planning commission meeting at the top of June, where we express these sentiments to you and Sam and John Hamm. You, my dear, bring a perspective to the body that no one else does. The angle at which you assess pieces of information, the feedback, the lens that you look through to provide that feedback is unique. It will be missed. We will miss you. Like Phil said, this is not goodbye, just a simple see you later. I don't know when later may be, but I know you do big things in this city. So I look forward to being able to lean on you and your expertise in the circles that we run in. And thank you so very much for sacrificing 6 years to this body. We appreciate you.
Thanks, Kiva.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth. Really, I'll stop laboring the
Thank you.
point.
Thank
It
you.
definitely is. You will definitely be missed from this body at the very least. And we look forward to continuing to have you in the sphere of influence, as Kiva pointed out. If we have no other business, if anyone needs to bring anything else up, please do it now.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I just want to do a friendly reminder to the public that the Planning Academy is open again. And very excited about that people can go into the Academy and sign up for it through the 17th of July. So please check it out. That was my introduction to the Planning Commission and learning about planning and the team. So just urging our public to get involved since it came back.
A very good point. Those programs are excellent at helping seed our entire community with people who are informed and knowledgeable on what we do, as well as the entire planning department.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Excellent. If there's nothing else, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I was hoping Commissioner McMillan would
Yeah,
want to.
I was trying to get off mute. Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. I'll take that Will's comment as a second. I think we have affirmation on that, so I will not run through the roll call, and I will consider this meeting adjourned. Thank you all very much. And Elizabeth, again, I know we're going to see you around, but it's always been fun.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Kathy, am I good to end this